Well, I certainly look forward to talking to you on the school closure idea. I believe the way we're going about it is sound and does protect our kids' safety, and obviously we were blessed yesterday to have, thank God, a nice sunny day as part of the cleanup continued. But certainly look forward to talking to you about that. On the opioid question, we've only just begun to fight. I know you feel the same way. There's a lot more we have to do. Outside of your own family, one of your biggest fans in New York City is the First Lady of New York City, Charlene McCray, my wife, who believes fundamentally in what you're doing and wants to partner with you on Staten Island and beyond. So we're going to be doing a lot more together.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Senator. Assemblyman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
First of all, let me just thank your staff during the weekend of during the heavy snowstorm that we was facing due to the fact that we had numerous of phone calls in my office. My office was open Saturday and Sunday, just for the record.
Good for you. We appreciate that.
As a result, that we was getting so many phone calls of people who have no heat and no hot water. And I would like to thank your staff, HPD, as well as your staff on the government affairs, Daniel Abramson and Brian Hannon, for their persistent and continue talking back and forth with me during the weekend until we solve the problems in Red Hook. We have 2 buildings in Red Hook completely without heat. They came back in less than 2 hours. We have people in my district who landlords was not giving the heat. They managed to talk to National Grid and as well as to the landlords themselves, because I have the phone number of the landlords. So we use your agency and your power to scare them and get it done. So I want to put that on the record for the job well done during this storm. I do have a few questions. And going back to education. As you probably know, was a study that was conducted by CDC back in 2013, where it stated that suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for Hispanic aged 15 to 24, and this includes females and males. In New York City, Hispanics teens attend suicidal more than twice the rate of white youth. My question to you is whether or not what is the plan that you have in place in order to address the issues of mental health, especially suicidal among teenagers in the school system?
Well, I appreciate the question, Assemblyman. It's a real challenge, and one of the things we believe is that until now we have not had a holistic mental health strategy for the city. The effort my wife has been working on, Thrive NYC, is at least a strong beginning towards a comprehensive mental health system and approach for the city. One of the things we're doing is focusing on children early. That means everything from making more resources available for mental health supports for the youngest children to focusing on the way we teach our teachers to approach mental health issues, straight on through to our community school approach, which puts mental health professionals in the schools directly so that we can identify problems and act on them early. We all know, and there's many tragic examples, young people who identified early on. I sadly point out the example in Newtown, Connecticut. The young man who ended up killing so many school children had evident mental health problems for years and years. They went untreated. We have a chance to reach young people early, and that could be about stopping suicide or other types of negative outcomes. So we believe the investments we're making are going to lead to a lot more young people being identified early and actually having the services they need. We're also creating something called NYC Support, which will come online over the next year, which is literally a service through which people can call and get connected to healthcare services, and then there's an ongoing monitoring effort to support them in that, to make sure they actually get what they need in a timely basis and follow through. That hasn't existed in the past, because we all know it's very hard for anyone to navigate the mental health opportunities that exist, especially for parents with children. The system's almost set up in a way that even if you heard about where services are, they're very, very hard to access. So we're trying to break through that fundamentally, and that I think will be one of the ways we start to address this tragic reality of teen suicide.
Well, one of the things that I have introduced a piece of legislation about mandating that we should do early assessment of mental health in the school system. I do believe, like you, and I do believe strongly that prevention, once we identify the problems that maybe some of the child might have, that problem probably was not created by the child, was created by the parents. And we also have to realize that sometimes the parent has been stuck at the age of 6 or 7 or 10 years old. So I do have a bill mandating that we should have a social worker, mental social worker in every school in the state of New York, a psychology in the School of New York as well as define what the role of the psychology and the guidance council is all about. I would like for you and your staff to look at it and give you recommendation. I think that, again, I do believe in early intervention. I believe that if we can catch the problem early enough, we will be able to have less of our youth to go through the criminal justice path. And I hope that I can encourage you to do so. Now, last year I was invited by default to be part of your announcement at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal to rebuild the port in Sunset Park. One of the major issues that we are facing is that is a lack of communication with EDC, and the way that they conducted these two hearings to include people, I was very happy to hear from them to ask for my recommendation, but my recommendation was not really taken into consideration. And my recommendation was very simple: reach out to the community, talk to the community, make sure the community get engaged, and even offer my office to make sure that we can do outreach together. The fact that I have a list of community group and community organizations and constituents that can participate and be part of the process. So, you know, the lack of communication regarding embracing more people to participate in the process was lacking. One of the biggest questions I have is this is a rumor that is going out in Sunset Park more and more often now, in coming more close to my office, is that it's a belief that this project, this development, will bring about 55,000 more trucks into Sunset Park every year. As you know, I had the BQE that everybody can cross through Sunset Park. They pay the toll in Staten Island and they pay the toll in Manhattan at the end of at the other side. We don't get no money as a result of that. We just get the environmental impact of the emission that is coming out of the fume of the cars. So my question is, and if you don't have the answer, we can follow up later. But my question is, it is going to be any kind of environmental impact study, and also a trucking study, a vehicle study about how many trucks are going to be coming in and out of this facility once the facility is built. And the last question is regarding the jobs opportunity, where the union's longshoremen feel that they've been left out of the process. And I've been trying to encourage them to be in the process, because I hope that the people of Sunset Park will benefit from these good paying jobs that are coming out as a result of this development that I will continue to support. I'm being a supporter of that. I have no problem in the backlash that I'm getting, but I think it's very critical for me to ensure the people of my community that these 5,000 trucks that are coming through, it is true, it is not true, and what is the city is doing to address that. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here today.
Thank you for raising the concerns, Assemblyman. First of all, I'd say I share your enthusiasm for the potential of what we can do in terms of creating jobs in your district. And these, in many cases, again, would be solid middle-class jobs in terms of the pay levels and the benefit levels. There's a lot that has to be worked out until we get to that point. So until, by the time we get to the jobs being created and whatever trucks running, there's a lot of time to make the adjustments and to create the kind of balance we need. We all want the jobs. We all want high-quality jobs. We want them to maximally benefit Sunset Park and Red Hook and the surrounding communities that have a lot of economic need. If that involves a certain amount of truck traffic, we obviously have to make sure it's a fair amount and it's managed properly, and we look at any health or safety issues related. But there is time to do that. I want to make sure you feel that you're being consulted, your community is being consulted. We certainly want to work with our labor partners So we'll double back with EDC to make sure that that process is consultative going forward. But I think the goal here is one that will greatly benefit your district. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we will back and continue.
All right. Accept. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Young. Good afternoon, Mayor de Blasio. First, I want to thank you for the coordination of your office with my office and others on Staten Island and Brooklyn with respect to the response to the storm. And I, for once, can say that I think we are on Staten Island, overall, we're quite happy. So thank you for that.
Music to my ears.
I know, it's amazing. Not to belabor the point on the property tax issue, I would be remiss if I did not at least chime in on it. And while it is an undisputed fact that the city has not taken steps to raise the property tax rate, property taxes have gone up nevertheless. And homeowners are feeling it, and I just want you to understand the concerns that they have. And it's the unfair way in which we assess properties in New York. It's a Byzantine method. So while we may disagree on the issue of a property tax cap, I think the discussion has to continue so that we can provide some sort of relief for our middle-class homeowners. We want them to stay and thrive in New York City. I just wanted to get that on the record, so you don't have to respond. I know your position on it. I want to go to a couple of issues in your presentation. One, on your housing plan. I know you have an ambitious housing plan to create 200,000 units of affordable housing, but with the collapse of the 421A and the tremendous opposition you're getting from community groups across the city, how are you going to achieve that, goal of 200,000 units?
Well, I would say a couple of things. First of all, we believe that the 421A reform we put forward made sense, actually represented an extraordinary consensus between City Hall, real estate community housing advocates. There was a real sense that this was the kind of balanced reform, was in the taxpayers' interest, would create more affordable housing, would stop subsidizing luxury housing, et cetera. We believe that idea is alive and well and should be handled here in the legislature as quickly as possible so we can have the kind of program that's actually fair and will help us to create a substantial amount of affordable housing. But in the meantime, we have a number of efforts already underway that certainly throughout calendar year 2016 will yield a tremendous amount of affordable housing. So a lot of the development that was already moving and a lot of our preservation efforts, which have nothing to do with the 421A program, those will continue. In fact, we'll intensify them as we work with the legislature to find a way forward on a tax incentive program. In terms of the response to mandatory inclusionary zoning, we believe mandatory inclusionary zoning is more pertinent than ever, given that 421A is now not on the table. And it's one of the best tools we have to get more affordable housing and demand fairness from developers who obviously want the opportunity to build and often build higher in the city. Yes, community boards have expressed real concern. I say, as a former city council member, it never surprises me when a community board, in perfectly good faith, expresses concern about any form of development. I think it's, the assumption. But when you look at the city council members, when you look at the views of other elected officials and major organizations in our city, like AARP, which has a huge membership and fully supports our plan, I think that the debate is more and more balanced in favor of the plan, and I think we will be able to move forward.
Hopefully so. I want to turn to another issue. As you know, earlier this year, Senator Klein and myself, joined by Councilmember Richie Torres and Councilman Mark Traeger, who was somewhere in the room here where he stepped out, we released a report on the New York City Housing Authority, detailing what we called the worst slumlord in the state. And you know the conditions of NYCHA, the NYCHA developments, and we all know that they have suffered from years of neglect, and there's no doubt about that. So Your last year, the city put up $100 million towards NYCHA. This year, you're proposing the same thing. You're asking the state to match it. We did that last year. But the concern we have is that if we just give the money over to NYCHA, we're going to get the same result we've gotten. Not just, it's not your problem. It's happened with every administration. NYCHA seems to be the giant black hole that money goes to disappear, and we never see actual improvements in the facilities, in the properties. So how can we make sure that the money is spent appropriately and goes towards the things that we know we need, whether it's mold remediation or, safety and lighting and security and door locks and improvements in kitchens and bathrooms?
I would say that I understand why you feel what you feel about the history of the Housing Authority. I think you're right about the history of disinvestment. I think we're in the past too often right that money was not used well enough. We have been very clear that I'm taking personal responsibility for the situation at the Housing Authority. I talk regularly with the leadership. We have provided unprecedented financial support for the Housing Authority. We literally canceled a city tax on the Housing Authority as a pilot. Going back to 1947, we canceled that so the Housing Authority could take those resources and put them towards repairs. As you know, for many years, the Housing Authority was forced to pay separately for police coverage of its developments. We canceled that, put that money back towards repairs. Consequently, the amount of repairs has increased intensely. We changed the policy in terms of the scaffolding in many of the developments that were being left for no apparent reason for months or years on end. We ended that policy. We ensured that projects are moved on rapidly and then the scaffolding comes down. We're changing a lot of things, but the biggest thing is the next generation NYCHA plan. Given the $17 billion in capital needs that have gone unmet, we had to come up with a plan that for the long term would deal with the capital challenges. And we had to come up with a financial restructuring in terms of the expense side of the budget. We have that now with the next generation NYCHA plan. And we will keep doing everything we have to do, including the right kind of development on NYCHA land that focuses on affordable housing and also resources to actually go back to NYCHA for changes. And then we're putting our own city capital dollars in to address the roof issues. And again, a lot of the resources that come out of the other approaches within Next Gen NYCHA will go at issues like fixing roofs, fixing mold, safety systems, et cetera. So I think NYCHA is changing rapidly. And this plan with every passing year will have more and more impact. That being said, we need help from the state. That first $100 million has still not arrived. We're in the fiscal year still. We have not seen the money. We need your support and your colleagues' support in ensuring that money arrives. It will help, obviously, hundreds of thousands of people. And then I think there's a big question when we look forward to next year, what will be the status of the federal government on the question of housing? And there could be some big changes next year in the composition of the federal government that might lead to a reopening of the housing discussion, and we'd like to believe a chance to get some of the support that would actually relieve some of this pressure.
We live in hope on that. I want to move to homeless policy. You and I have been around long enough by now that we remember when the Department of Homeless Services was created back in 1993 by the City Council, and in response to the lawsuit. And also, I remember, if you remember, Muzzy Rosenblatt. Do you remember Muzzy Rosenblatt?
Yes.
He convinced,
memorable name.
Right. He convinced Mayor Dinkins that if we had a separate freestanding agency to focus on homeless policy, that would be the best way to deal with the housing crisis, the homeless crisis, which is very similar to the crisis we're seeing now. Thousands of people undomiciled living in the streets, the city not getting the best value from the shelters that they were using or putting people up in hotels. Very similar situation. I would say after 22 years of this experiment, I actually believe that we would be better off if we put DHS back into HRA under the auspices of, the Commissioner of HRA, Steve Banks. What's your opinion on that?
We have a 90-day review that's well underway now. Commissioner Banks working with First Deputy Mayor Shores and our new Deputy Mayor, Dr. Palacio. And we're going to look at a number of options of how to improve the work of DHS and the coordination between DHS and HRA. I've certainly heard some, and you and others suggest potentially re-merging. All options will be on the table. I don't want to bias the discussion by saying we have a preference because we're going through a careful operational review. But one thing I can guarantee is at the end of this process, we are going to have a better operation, a different operation. And I agree with you that Commissioner Banks has done an outstanding job as part of this review and before in addressing these very difficult issues. The changes now, I would say, and you're an expert, you've paid a lot of attention to this issue for a long time. We needed a whole different level of supportive housing for the first time, only in the last few months with the city's announcement of 15,000 units and now the governor coming forward with 20,000 units. This is the first time, literally in our history, we've talked about the real numbers we need. That's a great blessing, and I commend the governor for that, and we look forward to following through on that. We never had the right kind of preventative programs, or we had them only maybe more accurate for a very brief period of time. We never had the right kind of rental subsidy programs for a sustained period of time. We rarely had the right kind of anti-eviction programs. We've now taken all of those tools and put them on the playing field simultaneously, well-resourced and for the long haul. And we've told landlords all over the city that these subsidy programs we're going to keep them for the long haul because we need to do it right. So the preventative programs have reached 91,000 people. Not all of them would end up in shelter, but some of them for sure would have, and that's helped. 22,000 folks have been moved out of shelter into housing. That shows that the subsidy efforts are working. And for the first time ever, we're going to have Homestat doing consistent outreach, working individual by individual to get people off the streets, 500 new safe haven beds, more homeless and runaway youth beds than ever before, growing as needed each year. So I'd like to believe that despite the fact it is a historic problem, for the first time, the city is arraying the tools necessary to actually turn this problem around.
Hopefully, and I'm also a big supporter of the governor's intervention here and his willingness to partner with the city to create what I believe that both of you know very well. It's that continuum of care for the homeless. As you and I know, homelessness doesn't happen overnight to people. It's usually a slow, steady descent into it. It's not just income insecurity. It's a combination of things. So there are addiction issues and domestic violence and mental illness, and all of those things lead to further income insecurity and housing insecurity. So hopefully there will be real coordination between the city and the state to address those issues. And I was just going to say this again. I think HRA is the agency that really should oversee this because many of these clients are cross-systemized. They're already being serviced by HRA caseworkers as well. So to the extent that you have broad case management, you're able to really service a family.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Assemblyman Colton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
I would like to ask you a few questions on a topic which is a very high priority to me. And I'd like to go from the earliest to the highest levels of it. I believe that CUNY is an institution which is very important to New York as an economic engine, both to the city and to the state. Up to 1976, the history was that there was a 50-50 split in terms of the operating expenses of this great institution. And then during the city's fiscal crisis at that point, the state stepped up to the plate and the city's share was reduced to what now I understand is a token of 1 or 2% of the operating costs. I believe that CUNY very passionately is extremely important, especially to all of our young adults, in terms of giving them what they need in order to be able to overcome economic difficulties. Now, in this particular time, we have the city and the state, both their economic climates is a lot better. Obviously, we need to reserve money, and we need to make sure that they stay in good condition. But would it not be reasonable for the city to show its willingness to step up to the plate and to increase their share as a symbol of the importance of this institution to young people throughout the city and the state, and as a way to, show its willingness and its priority to making sure that young people continue to have all the benefits of CUNY? Would it not be unreasonable to raise it more than the 1 or 2% of the operating expenses?
I'm going to let Assemblyman Dean Fullhandle go over the overall financial reality and the contributions we make. The City of New York contributes in substantial ways to CUNY, In fact, in the last two budgets, we've added resources to CUNY in a strategic manner. We believed fundamentally in the ASAP program as a tool to make sure that young people went into CUNY succeeded, and we thought that was a good investment on top of any other obligations that we had. We believed fundamentally that STEM programs should be supported, so we put a growing amount of resources into supporting two-year STEM programs because we knew that would help a lot of our young people go right into technology jobs that are now growing in the city, even with a two-year degree. So we have certainly made targeted investments in CUNY. We have already made clear to the state that we will pay our proportionate share in terms of the labor agreement that we hope will be struck. We believe the folks who work, members of PSC CUNY, deserve a new labor deal. We've obviously, in terms of the city workforce, I'm very proud of the fact we have 95% of our union members now in either a ratified contract or an agreement. We think the PSC CUNY members should be covered by a new contract. We've already made very clear we will pay our appropriate share of that. So there's many ways in which we contribute to CUNY. I think given the other needs that I've outlined, the challenges we face, pension costs, health and hospitals costs, everything we're trying to invest in terms of public safety, education, et cetera, and the fact that our reserves could easily be wiped out by an economic downturn, I don't think it's right to take state obligations and increasingly put them on the City of New York. But I'd like Dean just to summarize the city's ongoing contributions to CUNY.
Right. When the takeover occurred, CUNY senior colleges were put on the exact same footing as SUNY senior colleges. The community college piece was divided so that the city would pay a third, tuition would do a third, the state would do a third, and that's the exact same arrangement as all community colleges across the state, except in all local community colleges of SUNY. Actually, the local government controls the local board of trustees, where we have 1/3 representation on the whole piece. So we do pay actually 34%. Tuition pays about 40%, and the state pays the remainder of the difference. So we do make more than the actual statutory commitment to the community colleges. And then we pay half of the capital on the community colleges.
All right, I just think that in a sense of partnership and in making it clear the priority that CUNY has to New York City and to New York State, that it would be not unreasonable to think about increasing the percentage when of the operating costs it's so 1 or 2% is, it just doesn't, it seems very low.
But again, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Assemblyman. I just want to make sure, because I think Dean kind of ran through that. Yeah, we're paying half the capital costs of the community colleges, and repeat again.
34% of the operating cost of the community college, the biggest governmental contribution. Tuition pays 40%, and the remainder is paid by the state.
And please just reiterate how that compares to what other localities do around the state with their community colleges.
We're at the high end of what most localities do around the state in their community college contribution.
I think one of the reasons why New York City does generate so much revenue to the state is because of the importance of CUNY. And, I think, but that also means it's important to New York City. So I think as a gesture, it is not unreasonable. There has to be negotiation, there has to be discussion. For example, the governor has said we need to find administrative efficiencies with CUNY and SUNY. Is it reasonable that the state funds CUNY $36 million and funds the SUNY $14 million? So there's room here for maneuvering, and I just think that, the city has to, engage in that. On another topic, which is also very important, the area of pre-K. Last year, the governor stepped up and he made a commitment to provide state funding to New York City for over $300 million. And that has continued. He's proposing that be continued again this year. Also under the smart bonds issue, which the governor proposed and the legislature passed and the voters approved, I believe we're going to have, New York City will be eligible for some $783 million in funding. One of the things that I think I want to, emphasize and associate with Assembly Member Kathy Nolan is the importance of the transportable units, those units being, replaced. But also, A very big issue in my district is pre-K seating. We have serious problems with that. There isn't enough. For example, and even where it's found, there are problems. In District 20, a location was found for pre-K seating, and it's in the middle of a heavy truck zone, and there's a lot of community opposition with parents on that. So what efforts, what plans has the city made to try to get more pre-K seats in the public schools? And how do we do that?
A couple different things, Assemblyman. So the effort to reach the level that we are at now, 68,500 plus young people in pre-K, and again, that was 20,000 when I started my administration, so we've had almost 50,000 kids per year now. That happened, extraordinary effort, and I commend all of my colleagues who pulled that off, and I thank again everyone here and everyone in the legislature for providing the funding. But that required a heavy emphasis on existing community-based organizations, existing schools of various types, including religious schools, and it's been a very, very effective effort. At the same time, we want to develop more capacity. So, for example, in our capital plan, there are additional pre-K centers, standalone pre-K centers in some neighborhoods. We continue to work closely with the Archdiocese and the Diocese in terms of buildings that they have available coming into our domain either by lease or by purchase. And we also make adjustments constantly. The locations we had this year were the ones that we thought were the best able to provide the best quality pre-K for our kids. But if we find that a location ended up to not be as good as we want it to be, we can make adjustments for next year because we actually had additional locations being offered, not always geographically exactly where we wanted them, but we still have some choices to work with. We would love to work with you in your office if we think there's a location that should be better, to see if there's another site in the community that would be a better alternative.
Yeah, because this is a very important priority, I think, from the pre-K level all the way up to higher education, and I really think the city has to put a big effort into that. There are a couple of other areas I had, but I'm going to leave that for now because my time is just about up. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Senator?
Thank you, Assemblyman. Our next speaker is Senator Espaillat.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Well, first, let me start out by trying to dispel something that has been really alluded to here with regards to CUNY and what seems to be a perception that the rest of the state is going to be saddled disproportionately with the operational costs of CUNY. Well, in fact, you know, traditionally, and I've been here 20 years, it's the other way around. You know, the city produces far more revenue for the state than it gets back in the budget. That was the basis for the campaign fiscal equity lawsuit, that many felt that the city was giving more in revenue, that the windfall of revenue from the city, coming from the city, was so much more than we got back for schools. And just recently, when we had the settlement on the Attorney General's office had settlement money distributed here to the state, although the offenses may have been committed in the city, it was really more upstate and outside of the city that benefited from the investment in these close to maybe 5-point-something billions of dollars. So I want to dispel the notion that the city is saddling the rest of the state. First of all, it perpetuates this upstate versus downstate scenario, which I think is damaging to all of us. But let me also just begin with the CUNY piece and say that in traditional Shakespearean Albany logic, a cut is a cut by any other name. And so every time we see mergers, we know that at the end of the day, it may mean a cut. When we see downsizing, we know that at the end of the day, when the rubber meets the road, that may be a cut. When we see administrative efficiencies and reform, we know that at the end of the day, this could very well be a cut. So I am concerned, and I want to ask you, what in fact will be hurt? If, let's say, those $485 million were cut right now, what kind of services, operations will be compromised and heard within the CUNY system right now, if this were to happen today?
Well, let me start by saying, again, let's acknowledge an unusual situation here. This item appeared in the budget.